Max Verstappen has been spotted on TOTO WOLFF's yacht in Sardinia. Stay until the end to find out about the brutal contract TOTO WOLFF has offered to the current Red Bull driver. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. Max Verstappen's private jet landing in Sardinia during the quiet days of summer might have looked like a typical getaway for the reigning world champion. Just another luxurious pause between the high-speed chaos of a demanding Formula One calendar. But in this sport, especially at the highest level, appearances are almost never what they seem. There are no coincidences. Every movement, every destination, every quiet meeting far from the paddock carries layers of intent. So when Verstappen's sleek bombardier was spotted just meters from TOTO WOLFF's unmistakable Gulfstream, the alarms didn't just ring, they screamed. Whatever had been dismissed as fantasy just weeks ago has now broken into reality. A conversation once limited to whispers and speculation is now being played out on European coastlines behind heavily tinted windows and closed villa doors. The tectonic plates beneath Formula One are shifting. The departure of Christian Horner from Red Bull Racing wasn't just a headline, it was a trigger. The final domino that has set an unstoppable chain reaction into motion. For months, the foundations of the once untouchable empire in Milton Keynes had been cracking. Whispers of tension between key players, concerns over long-term vision, and internal battles that spilled beyond the walls of hospitality units had been building. And now, with Horner gone and Adrian Newey already plotting his next chapter elsewhere, Max Verstappen finds himself at a crossroads few thought possible. The narrative once seemed set in stone. Verstappen wasn't just a Red Bull driver, he was their crown jewel, their ultimate creation. Brought into the program as a teenage phenomenon, shaped by the hands of engineers, protected by the political skill of Horner, and unleashed with a machinery that made him untouchable, Max was the living embodiment of Red Bull's F1 dream. The speed, the aggression, the relentlessness. It all aligned perfectly with the team's identity. And yet, that identity is now unraveling. The dynasty that once felt eternal now feels fragile. The pulse of the team, the rhythm that brought pole positions, fastest laps and world titles, is fading. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. What began as quiet dissatisfaction is now becoming a clear plan. Verstappen is no longer thinking in hypotheticals. He isn't merely observing the chaos, he's reading the landscape, weighing the future, and making moves. That meeting in Sardinia wasn't casual. It wasn't accidental. Sources close to the Mercedes camp have confirmed that serious discussions are not just happening, they're progressing. Details are being explored. Timelines are being drafted. And if everything continues along this trajectory, 2026 won't just mark a new set of technical regulations. It will signal the birth of one of the most improbable game-changing alliances in the history of the sport. TOTO WOLFF, a master of timing, influence, and long-term plays, has been patiently waiting for an opportunity like this. He's never stopped thinking about Verstappen. Even during the peak of Lewis Hamilton's reign, Wolff always kept an eye on the Dutchman's meteoric rise. The raw speed, the racing IQ, the killer instinct, it's the kind of talent that only comes once in a generation. And now, with Mercedes in the process of redefining itself, with a fresh power unit project for 2026, and with the era of Hamilton slowly reaching its natural conclusion, the stars are beginning to align. For Verstappen, the move is as much about vision as it is about performance. Red Bull's future, once so certain, now looks clouded. Key figures are departing. Internal stability has been replaced by boardroom politics. And the new leadership structure, still in flux, hasn't earned his trust. He's watching all of it unfold, quietly but intently. Max doesn't need a paycheck. He needs a project he believes in. A team that can keep up with his ambitions, not just for another season or two, but for the long haul. Mercedes, meanwhile, is preparing for a rebirth. The recent struggles have been humbling, but also clarifying. There's a hunger within Brackley to reclaim the throne, to return not just as competitors, but as the new standard. And bringing Verstappen into the fold would be more than a statement, it would be a declaration of dominance. It would say to the world that Mercedes is ready to tear up the past and build a new future around the most ferocious driver of this generation. There's another layer to all of this that can't be ignored: legacy. Max Verstappen, despite his youth, is already thinking about his place in the sport's history. He's conquered the current era. He's shattered records, rewritten expectations, and silenced doubters. But the next step, the truly great step, is to do it again, somewhere else. To switch allegiances and still conquer. To prove that his brilliance transcends machinery, that his supremacy isn't tied to a single car or a single system. It's what separates legends from icons. And then, of course, there's the element of rivalry. Verstappen knows that moving to Mercedes, stepping into a seat once defined by Hamilton's greatness, is the ultimate provocation. It's bold. It's dangerous. But it's also irresistible. The kind of storyline that doesn't just live in the headlines, it rewrites the history books. The idea of Max, in silver or black overalls, staring down Red Bull across the grid in 2026 with a brand new engine formula and an entirely new era of the sport ahead, that's not just exciting, it's explosive. Red Bull isn't blind to this. Internally, there's panic. Executives are scrambling to reassure the Verstappen camp. Promises are being made, restructures are being discussed, and backup plans are quietly being assembled. But the truth is clear, they no longer hold the cards. Max holds the leverage. He knows his worth. He knows the team needs him more than he needs them. And as the pieces continue to shift, it's becoming increasingly evident that this isn't just about contracts or performance clauses. This is about belief, about identity, about the future. The countdown to 2026 has already begun, not just for new cars, but for a new narrative. Max Verstappen aligning with TOTO WOLFF, building a new empire with Mercedes, and walking away from the team that made him who he is would be the single most dramatic power shift Formula One has seen in decades. And if that meeting in Sardinia was any indication, the wheels are already turning. Faster than anyone expected. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. This has nothing to do with nostalgia, sentiment, or respect for past allegiances. This is about dominance. This is about rewriting the next era of Formula One. This is about a meticulously crafted vision, built not around yesterday's achievements, but around tomorrow's conquests. For TOTO WOLFF, the pain of falling from the mountaintop post-2021 hasn't dulled his ambition. If anything, it's sharpened it. The loss of supremacy, the sting of watching Red Bull rise uncontested, the endless questions about Mercedes' decline, all of it has only fueled a deeper, colder, more calculated hunger. And now, with the 2026 regulation reset looming large on the horizon, the Austrian mastermind sees a chance to rebuild, not slowly, not cautiously, but aggressively, and he knows exactly who he needs at the core of that vision: Max Verstappen. Behind closed doors, away from the heat of the paddock and the glare of media scrutiny, a private meeting took place in Sardinia that could go down as one of the most pivotal off-track moments in recent F1 history. On the surface, it appeared casual, just two men sharing a meal, sipping champagne, enjoying seafood under the Mediterranean sun. But beneath the pleasantries was a strategic dialogue brimming with consequence. Sources close to Mercedes, individuals deeply embedded in the technical and management side, have confirmed that this was no social call. Verstappen and Wolff weren't reminiscing about the past or trading paddock gossip. They were plotting something massive. What unfolded during those hours was nothing short of a strategic deep dive. Data sheets, simulations, and conceptual diagrams were reviewed. They dissected Mercedes' ambitious plans for the new car under the 2026 regulations, plans that involve a radical aerodynamic approach, a brand new chassis philosophy, and an all-new power unit architecture designed to maximize efficiency without sacrificing peak performance. They didn't just talk about machinery, they talked about mindset, culture, identity, role definition. Wolff wasn't just pitching a seat in a race car, he was offering Verstappen the opportunity to anchor an empire. To become not just the face of Mercedes, but the force that drives it forward into a new golden age. Toto didn't sugarcoat anything. He was brutally transparent about where the team stands. The W15 is a step forward, but still a work in progress. George Russell is committed, consistent, and capable, but he's not the definitive weapon that guarantees titles year after year. Andrea Kimi Antonelli is on the rise, a raw diamond still being polished. But there's only one driver on the grid today who blends sheer speed, technical mastery, and mental composure into an unstoppable package, and that's Max. He is not just a four-time world champion. He is a phenomenon. 65 wins, dozens of poles, countless laps led, and more than any statistic, a mentality that refuses to accept anything less than absolute superiority. Verstappen doesn't flinch under pressure. He doesn't buckle in chaos. He doesn't offer excuses or dwell on setbacks. He simply adapts, attacks, and annihilates. He's built for war. And Mercedes, for all its resources, engineering brilliance and history, lacks one crucial ingredient right now: a driver who embodies that merciless hunger every single race weekend. That's what Toto wants. That's the missing piece he's hunting for. And in Max, he sees a once-in-a-generation opportunity to fill it. Max, for his part, listened intently. He's not easily swayed. He's loyal, yes, but he's not blind. Red Bull is no longer the bulletproof machine it once was. Internal politics have clouded the waters. The Christian Horner scandal, the ongoing power struggles, the unease within the technical departments, it's all taking its toll. Verstappen, though silent in public, is calculating behind the scenes. He knows that legacy is defined not just by what you win, but how you win it, and where. The idea of conquering with two different teams, of lifting titles in two radically different eras of car design, of building something new from the ground up rather than inheriting a finished product, that carries a different kind of immortality. The chemistry between Toto and Max during that meeting wasn't superficial. There was tension, yes, but also alignment. They understand each other in ways few people in the sport do. Both have suffered public pressure. Both have made enemies. Both are driven by a sense of destiny. There is mutual respect, not just for what each has accomplished, but for what each believes the future should look like. And neither man has any interest in second place. Wolff made it clear, Mercedes isn't interested in rebuilding slowly. They want to shatter the current order. They want to dismantle Red Bull's grip on the sport and establish a new dominance, one founded on ruthless efficiency and controlled aggression. He outlined his blueprint with clinical precision: budget allocation, engineering direction, leadership structure, brand vision, and Max's role as not just a driver but a cornerstone of a cultural reset. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a declaration. The appeal for Verstappen isn't just the car. It's the chance to control the next chapter of F1 history. To lead, to shape, to define. To walk into enemy territory and turn it into his own empire. Mercedes offers not just potential, they offer the promise of legacy without limits. As whispers grow louder and speculation intensifies, those inside the paddock are beginning to feel it. Something is shifting. The ground beneath Red Bull is no longer stable. And the silence from Verstappen's camp speaks volumes. He hasn't denied the meeting. He hasn't affirmed loyalty. He's simply watching, waiting, calculating. Because for Max, this isn't just about driving. This is about control. About writing his own legend. And Toto Wolff may have just handed him the pen. The discussion didn't take long to reach the most critical and sensitive topic of all: the driver pairing. Behind the polished smiles, behind the diplomatic soundbites from both camps, the reality is far more calculating. The question wasn't just whether Max Verstappen could fit into Mercedes. It was whether the current structure of the team could survive his arrival. And according to multiple high-level insiders, Verstappen left no ambiguity in his stance. He doesn't envision himself sharing power, influence, or the spotlight with George Russell. This wasn't a personal attack. There was no venom, no emotional outburst, no rivalry drama. It was something colder, sharper, an analysis rooted in championship logic, the kind of clarity only a three-time world champion can deliver without blinking. Verstappen reportedly conveyed, in unmistakably direct terms, that he does not view Russell as a long-term co-leader in a team aiming to reclaim dominance. In Max's world, success demands total commitment to a single overwhelming force. The idea of dual leadership was dismissed entirely. He sees Russell as talented, yes. Fast, undoubtedly. But lacking the relentless precision, mental resilience, and race-by-race consistency required to mount a serious championship campaign over an entire season against the likes of Norris, Leclerc, and even his own past self. To Verstappen, any team with split loyalties is inherently vulnerable. He's lived through internal conflict, seen what happens when resources are divided, when egos collide, and when the narrative becomes about balance instead of conquest. That's not the future he's chasing. He doesn't want to coexist, he wants to command. And if Mercedes truly intends to rise from the ashes and challenge Red Bull's supremacy, he made it clear, it has to be under his leadership. Not shared. Not debated. Defined. Absolute. Unquestioned. Initially, this created discomfort. George Russell, after all, isn't just a Mercedes driver. He's a homegrown project, someone handpicked and nurtured through Mercedes' junior program. He's Toto Wolff's pride, a product of years of investment, belief, and careful development. Displacing him isn't a casual decision, it's a full-scale detour from a long-term strategy. And yet, even that loyalty began to crack under pressure. Because as discussions intensified, and as Verstappen's demands were laid bare, the tone within the upper levels of Mercedes shifted. The emotional connection to Russell began to give way to colder calculations. The team's recent failures, their inconsistent performance under new regulations, their lack of a clear identity since Hamilton's decline, all of it began to weigh heavier than sentiment. And that's when Ola Kalinius, Mercedes-Benz CEO and arguably the most powerful figure in the operation, made a decision that altered the landscape overnight. According to highly placed sources, Kalinius has given full executive approval to pursue Verstappen. No restrictions, no bureaucratic interference, no budget ceilings. The project is no longer theoretical. It is active, aggressive, and operating at the highest level of urgency. This isn't exploratory interest. It's an all-out offensive to secure the signature of the most dominant driver in the sport. A financial proposal is already being assembled behind closed doors, and insiders confirm it's unlike anything Mercedes has ever put on the table before. We're talking about a 4-year deal valued at $100 million in total compensation, base salary, bonuses, personal image rights, team equity options. If finalized, it would eclipse every contract in recent memory, even Hamilton's most lucrative extensions during his peak. And this isn't just about the money. It's about signaling to the entire paddock that Mercedes is done waiting. They're not interested in rebuilding brick by brick. They want a shortcut to supremacy, and Verstappen is the key. Internally, there's growing belief that pairing Verstappen with the engineering firepower already in Brackley could trigger an immediate return to the front. Even before upgrades, even before radical car redesigns, the psychological effect alone would be enormous. Red Bull would be destabilized. Ferrari would be caught off guard. McLaren and Aston Martin would be forced to recalculate their strategies. A Verstappen switch would change the gravitational pull of the entire sport. What's more, this isn't just Mercedes reacting to the present, it's about protecting their future. With Hamilton entering the twilight of his career and the technical regulations set to reset again in 2026, Mercedes needs more than just a strong car. They need a figurehead, a weapon. Someone capable of dragging a car to places it shouldn't go, extracting results through sheer force of talent, and leading a factory through transition without blinking. Verstappen checks every box. He's not just the best driver available, he's the only one capable of carrying the kind of weight Mercedes needs lifted. And the team knows it. They feel it. That's why what once seemed impossible is now very much in play. The paddock hasn't caught up yet. Publicly, the parties remain cautious. No official statements. No confirmations. But the machine is already in motion. Horner's shadow looms, Verstappen's intentions are crystal clear, and Mercedes' silence is no longer passive, it's strategic. The foundations are shifting. Quietly, but rapidly. What comes next could rewrite not just a season, but the balance of power in Formula One for the next decade. The whispers have grown louder, the clues more brazen, and the tension in the paddock is now impossible to ignore. Christian Horner's covert maneuverings were already sending shockwaves through the F1 ecosystem, but the narrative has taken a dramatic new twist thanks to a seemingly throwaway remark by someone far too close to Max Verstappen to be taken lightly. Nelson Piquet Jr., Max's brother-in-law and someone who knows exactly when to keep his mouth shut, and when not to. Following a chaotic race weekend at Silverstone, one that exposed even more of Mercedes' inconsistencies and strategic stumbles, Piquet Jr. appeared in a brief post-race media chat. It could have gone unnoticed. It almost did. Until, with a sly grin and a shrug, he dropped a line that sent alarm bells ringing across the entire paddock. Who knows, maybe next year Max will be there. It was delivered with casual detachment, almost like a joke, maybe even one he regretted the moment it escaped his lips. But it was enough. Enough to pierce through the thick fog of secrecy and hint that talks between Max's camp and Mercedes might be much further along than anyone imagined. No, Verstappen didn't approve it. No, it wasn't part of a calculated media campaign. But sometimes, it's the accidental slips that reveal the truth. And when that slip comes from inside the family circle, it's not just gossip, it's ammunition. Max Verstappen has built a reputation on control. Control of the car, control of the race, control of the narrative. So when the Red Bull machine starts slipping from his grip, when cracks appear in the armor that once seemed indestructible, he doesn't panic. He calculates. He observes. And then he moves. The aura of Red Bull dominance, once so commanding it seemed eternal, has faded rapidly since the departure of Adrian Newey. The technical department, now left to pick up the pieces without its creative nucleus, is visibly struggling to adapt. What was once an unstoppable engineering force now looks human, capable of missteps, of hesitation, of being outdeveloped by rivals. The once invincible RB chassis no longer intimidates. Updates have stalled. Balance issues have returned. Race pace is inconsistent. What was a clear advantage just a season ago now looks like a battleground. Behind the scenes, Verstappen sees it all. And he's not the type to ignore warning signs. He thrives on progress, precision, and absolute competitiveness. And if Red Bull is trending away from those ideals, he's not going to waste prime years hoping it magically turns around. He's already aligning his future with a new vision, and Mercedes, for all its recent setbacks, is preparing to hand him the keys to a dynasty reborn. The pieces are starting to fall into place. Toto Wolff, long regarded as one of the sharpest minds in the paddock, is quietly constructing a scenario that would have seemed unthinkable just months ago. He understands the stakes. Mercedes is at a crossroads. The team is no longer the dominant juggernaut it once was, and with Lewis Hamilton stepping away, the pressure to deliver a competitive, inspiring new chapter has never been greater. That's why Verstappen isn't just a target, he's the centerpiece. The kingmaker. The driver who can instantly shift the balance of power across the sport with a single signature. But Verstappen isn't walking into a vacuum. He's potentially entering a storm. George Russell remains determined to prove he's not just the future of Mercedes, but the present. And then there's Andrea Kimi Antonelli, the Italian wonderkid, burdened with expectations so heavy they'd crush most rookies. Originally, Wolff had mapped out a patient development path for Antonelli, placing him at Williams, giving him time to mature, to make mistakes, to find his rhythm in a lower-pressure environment. But the timeline imploded. Political shifts, sponsorship demands, and a lack of viable options pushed Antonelli directly into the deep end, pairing him with Russell in 2025 in what many are now calling a premature leap of faith. So far, Antonelli hasn't crumbled, but he hasn't dazzled either. And that's the problem. In a team desperate for revival, there's no room for average. Wolff knows it. The board knows it. The fans feel it. And if Verstappen suddenly becomes available, everything changes. Antonelli's story doesn't end, but it may need to be rewritten. That's where Alpine enters the conversation. With the Renault-backed team set to become a Mercedes customer from 2026, an opportunity emerges. A satellite squad, fully powered by Mercedes technology, where Antonelli can refine his skills away from the suffocating spotlight. It would be the ideal proving ground, still connected to the factory team, but distant enough to allow real growth. Meanwhile, back in Brackley, Verstappen would be free to focus solely on winning. No distractions. No development babysitting. Just raw, unfiltered dominance. A team shaped around him. A power unit tailored to his style. A leadership structure rebuilt by Christian Horner, if that plan truly reaches its endgame. And while Russell might resist the shift, might fight to hold his ground, everyone in the sport knows what happens when Verstappen walks into a garage. He doesn't coexist. He takes over. This potential chain reaction, sparked by a single sentence from Piquet Jr., could set the entire F1 order into chaos. Red Bull would be gutted, both in talent and morale. Mercedes would ascend with a newfound identity. Alpine could evolve into a junior powerhouse. And every other team would be scrambling to counter a force they no longer control. What once felt like a distant rumor is now becoming a calculated strategy, hidden in plain sight. Verstappen is watching. Mercedes is planning. And the rest of the grid? They're bracing for the storm. Unless, of course, it's George Russell who gets pushed aside. A thought so sharp, so ruthless, it almost seems unthinkable at first glance. But this isn't a sport built on sentiment. This isn't a world that rewards patience, loyalty, or long-term potential when raw, unmatched, generational brilliance is knocking at the door. Russell, the golden project. Russell, the future. Russell, the driver who waited in the wings, took the hits during the rebuild, defended the crest when Mercedes was wounded and struggling. All of it, 3 grueling seasons of relentless dedication, of tireless work behind the scenes, of brushing off media pressure and standing tall next to Lewis Hamilton. could be wiped out in an instant if the opportunity to sign Max Verstappen becomes real. Because when you get a chance to land the most dominant driver of the modern era, you don't hesitate. You don't ask questions. You don't think about hurt feelings or career trajectories. You think about titles, about legacy, about rewriting history. Verstappen isn't just another top-tier driver. He's a force of nature, a phenomenon. The kind of competitor who tilts the championship equation by his mere presence. He bends strategy around him. He warps development timelines. He forces entire teams to raise their standards or collapse trying. He is, in no uncertain terms, the most valuable asset in the entire sport. And if Mercedes wants to rise again, to silence the doubters, to return to the top with authority, there's a growing sense that Max is the only name that can truly deliver it. And that's where the tension begins to boil beneath the surface. Behind closed doors in Brackley, the whispers are becoming louder. Engineers who once worked exclusively on George's side of the garage are rumored to be cautiously preparing scenarios that don't include his feedback. Strategists are reportedly modeling performance data that pits Max's driving style into existing simulations. Marketing departments are quietly floating what-if campaigns, not with Lewis and George, but with Max and one other figure, a team built around a juggernaut, not a balanced partnership. The very DNA of the team seems to be preparing, ever so discreetly, for a seismic shift. The atmosphere is changing. You can feel it in the silence of meetings, in the way questions go unanswered, in the looks exchanged across control rooms and hospitality units. Internally, people are aware that if the Red Bull empire continues to fracture, if Max Verstappen feels cornered, isolated, or disillusioned by the chaos surrounding Christian Horner, Helmut Marko, and the political minefield now consuming Milton Keynes, then Mercedes must be ready to strike. This isn't just about performance anymore. This is about timing, about leverage, about being in the right place with the right resources at the exact moment when the most dominant driver in the world begins to doubt his current reality. And that's when the hardest decisions emerge. Because Mercedes already has a structure, a plan, a lineup. George Russell isn't some replaceable number two. He's a Grand Prix winner, a proven qualifier, a driver who has outpaced Hamilton on several occasions. He's young, driven, and molded in the exact image Mercedes hoped for when they brought him into the fold. But this is Formula One. History is filled with stories of promising futures cut short by immediate greatness. When Max Verstappen is on the table, the calculus changes. It becomes colder, more transactional. It becomes ruthless. Even the optics, while brutal, can be spun. Publicly, the narrative could be framed around evolution, not betrayal. Russell's exit could be softened with language about timing, about opportunities elsewhere, about new challenges and mutual agreements. But behind the scenes, everyone would know the truth. That when push came to shove, Mercedes chose dominance over development. They chose the storm over the promise. They chose Max. And the impact of such a decision wouldn't be confined to just the team's driver lineup. The shockwave would travel across every level of the organization. Engineers would need to adjust to a new technical feedback style. Designers would have to refine concepts to fit Verstappen's brutal, aggressive inputs. Media relations would shift from managing harmony to navigating intensity. The entire culture would reshape itself overnight, because Max Verstappen doesn't adapt to a team adapts to him. And that adaptation wouldn't come easy. Max is known for his intensity, his expectations, his uncompromising focus. He demands excellence, and he exposes weakness. Any cracks in the system become visible the moment he steps into a simulator or sits in a debrief. For Mercedes, the reward is clear: titles, glory, resurrection. But the price is steep. The pressure, immense. The spotlight, blinding. Still, for a team that once dominated the hybrid era, that set records few thought would be broken, the hunger to return to the summit burns brighter than ever. They've endured the heartbreak, the decline, the awkward transition out of the Hamilton golden age. And now they stand on the edge of something massive, something terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. Because if they truly believe Max Verstappen is the key to unlocking a new era of supremacy, then everything else becomes secondary. Even George Russell. Even loyalty. Even the years spent building toward a vision that may no longer fit the reality they're chasing. And if that call is made, If Mercedes picks up the phone, makes the offer, seals the deal, then Formula One will change overnight. The paddock will buzz, fans will erupt, and the sport will enter a new chapter defined not by what was promised, but by what was taken. And in the center of it all will be Max Verstappen in silver, surrounded by a team that chose him not just to win, but to reign. The choice hasn't been made official, yet. But every hour that ticks by, every carefully worded soundbite, every sudden trip logged by private planes, every lingering glance between rival team principals, it's all pushing the narrative toward one extraordinary, earth-shattering outcome. The writing is no longer on the wall, it's being carved into the foundation of Formula One itself. The unthinkable is becoming not just possible, but increasingly inevitable. Max Verstappen may be preparing to walk away from Red Bull racing. And when he does, it won't just shake the sport, it will rip it wide open. Behind the polished smiles and canned post-race interviews, there's a storm brewing. Max Verstappen, the reigning king of the grid, the most dominant force the sport has seen in a generation, is no longer looking comfortable in the house he helped build. The team that elevated him to greatness is slowly shedding the very pillars that made it powerful. Christian Horner's future remains clouded in controversy. Adrian Newey, the technical mastermind who sculpted performance from air and carbon fiber, is already packing his genius for another project. What's left behind is not a fortress, it's a shell. A once unified force now riddled with fractures, uncertainty, and internal battles disguised as business as usual. And Max? He doesn't thrive in chaos. He thrives in control. In precision. In absolute confidence that every single person around him is pushing for the same goal with ruthless efficiency. But that confidence is gone. Replaced by questions, tension, and doubt. And for a driver operating at the absolute peak of his powers, at a level where every tenth of a second, every data point, every slipstream matters, doubt is unacceptable. Doubt is lethal. Doubt is the beginning of the end. He doesn't just want to keep winning, he wants to make history. He doesn't want to be remembered as the guy who won only in a Red Bull. He wants to transcend the car. Transcend the team. He wants to prove beyond any debate that he is the constant, and everything else is interchangeable. A great car didn't make him great, he made the car unstoppable. And to do that, to etch his name in the same breath as Schumacher and Hamilton, he may need to prove that his dominance follows him wherever he goes. And standing on the other side of that equation is Mercedes. A team that's tasted glory, felt humiliation, and is now clawing its way back to the top. A team with a leader in TOTO WOLFF who doesn't just think about race weekends, he plays the long game. He sees legacy. He understands timing. And right now, no opportunity is more tempting, more transformative, than bringing Max Verstappen into the fold. It would be a masterstroke, an era-defining move that could shift the competitive balance of the sport for years to come. The timing aligns too perfectly to ignore. With the new regulations arriving in 2026, every major team is reloading. Every driver is evaluating the next phase of their career. And Mercedes? They're building something. George Russell is fast, confident, and loyal. Andrea Kimi Antonelli is the prodigy everyone's watching. But Verstappen? He's the apex predator. The proven weapon. The kind of driver who doesn't need years of development, he delivers from day one. Imagine pairing him with Russell, or transitioning to a Verstappen-Antonelli future. It's not just a lineup, it's a dynasty in motion. But the question becomes, at what cost? Would Mercedes be willing to sideline George Russell, the driver they groomed for years, for the chance to secure short-term dominance? Would they risk unsettling the ecosystem to accommodate the most powerful force in modern F1? Or could they find a way to balance it all, retain Russell, groom Antonelli, and hand the keys to Max, forming the most dangerous three-driver ecosystem the sport has ever seen? This isn't just a question of performance, it's about power, timing, and influence. Verstappen is no longer just a driver, he's a brand, a symbol, a force that shifts the political and commercial landscape of the sport. Whoever gets him doesn't just get a world champion, they get leverage, visibility, credibility, and fear. The moment he walks into a new team garage, everything changes, from engineering conversations to boardroom negotiations to sponsorship valuations. And let's not pretend Red Bull isn't aware of what's at stake. They can sense it. The shift in Max's tone. The calculated distance. The guarded answers. They know. And yet, they may be powerless to stop it. Because no matter how many championships they've won together, If the team can't guarantee a future filled with the same brilliance, same vision, and same dominance, Max will leave. And when he does, he won't look back. Because the greats never do. All eyes are on the next move. It might not come in a press conference. It might not even come before the end of the season. But it's coming. The private talks. The legal wrangling. The subtle chess moves behind the scenes. The leaks. The jet sightings. The paddock tension. It's all part of a bigger story unfolding right in front of us, even if most people haven't realized it yet. This is more than a transfer. This is a tectonic shift in the sport's foundations. And when the first domino falls, whether it's a statement from Red Bull, a leaked contract clause, or a cryptic comment from TOTO WOLFF, it will ignite a firestorm of consequences that will echo across every garage, every pit wall, every media room in the world. Formula One will never be the same. So now we ask you, what's your take? Is Verstappen about to leave behind the empire he built to prove he can conquer another kingdom? Should Mercedes roll the dice and risk it all to secure the most dominant driver of the modern era? Can Toto manage the egos, the logistics, and the fallout? Is this a master plan years in the making, or a gamble that could backfire spectacularly? Tell us what you think in the comments. We want to hear your theories, your predictions, your hot takes. And when you're done, don't miss the next video lighting up your screen. It dives deep into TOTO WOLFF's recent cryptic remarks, the clues hidden in his tone, and why some insiders believe the deal with Max Verstappen is already done, just waiting for the right moment to explode.